I'm going to introduce today Debi Silber. She is the founder of the Betrayal Transformational Institute, but there's much more to her than that. So I'm going to hand over to Debi, and please, Debi, tell us more about you.
Sure. Well, looking forward to this conversation. It's my 30th year in business, and as life would change, so would business. So I started in health and then mindset and then personal development, had a really painful betrayal from my family, thought I did everything I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened a few years later. This time it was my husband. That was the deal breaker. So I got him out of the house and looked at the two experiences thinking, well, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And I realized, my boundaries were always getting crossed. I never took my own needs seriously and really felt that if nothing changes, nothing changes. So here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I said, I'm going back for a PhD. And it was in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. And while I was there, I did a study. I study betrayal, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, and my life.
Oh, that's incredible. And you've been through a lot. And I guess it's a story that many of us can identify with, whether being betrayed by a family because they've let us down. I can identify with that one. I don't think always people recognize that as a betrayal. But yeah, that's an interesting one. But yeah, I think most people would see betrayal as being cheated on.
And that's the most common, but there are so many different faces. And the way it works is the more you trust and the more you depend on someone, the bigger the betrayal. So for example, a child who's totally dependent on their parent and the parent does something awful, that's going to have a different impact than your best friend sharing your secret, your coworker taking credit for your idea. Both betrayals, different level of cleanup left in the wake. And the good news is you can heal from all of it, and not only heal, transform to become someone you never would have had the opportunity to become had that not happened. But that's when you move through some of the discoveries, which I'm happy to share if you want to hear about them.
Yeah, and I think that is great, because one of the things is that I notice, especially with clients, is that they feel stuck. They've been betrayed, and therefore they can't move past that, and they're not getting the learning from it. And I think there's so much in that. So I'd be really interested to learn a bit more about.
Sure. So I'll just give you all 3 discoveries, and this way you will see exactly why people get stuck. The first discovery was that, I had been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease, and I was like, you know what? Betrayal just feels so different. I didn't want to assume it was the same for everyone else. So I asked my study participants, if you've been through other traumas, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said, oh my gosh, it's so different. And here's why. Because it feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the self is shattered. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust. Think about it. If you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss. You don't necessarily lose your ability to trust. You don't, lose your sense of, you don't have a sense of maybe rejection. So it was different in that sense of that it feels so intentional. So that type of healing needed a new name, and I coined a new term, post-betrayal transformation. So that's the complete and total rebuild of your life plus yourself after an experience with betrayal.
Okay, can I ask you there, because I think you touched on illness, sickness. So I don't think we always recognize that. I mean, that sense of our body betraying us.
We could, and that's another common betrayal. We can feel we're doing everything right, and then we get a disease, and we can feel our bodies are betraying us, or we can we can realize we've betrayed our bodies because we're not taking good care of them. So very, very common. So anyway, that was the first discovery. The second was there's actually speaking of body, there's a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And, people think, oh, these symptoms are due to stress or due to aging. No, they're not. They're due to betrayal. And we've actually, we've had over 80,000 people or so take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. And the first thing is we've all been taught time heals all wounds. I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. People, there's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can still feel the hate. So we know you cannot count on time. You can't even count on a new relationship to heal a betrayal. It has to be deliberate and intentional. Yeah. And that leads me to the third. And unless you have a question about the second, I'm happy to move into the third discovery.
No, I think that's really true. I've noticed that people have gone through life. They've never healed from the trauma. They've never healed from the betrayal, and they carry it around with them, unwilling to, maybe unable as well, but it's really affecting their lives.
It affects everything, their health, their work, their relationships. I mean, we have the statistics to show exactly the areas, physical, mental, and emotional, that it impacts. But what you're speaking to is actually part of the third discovery. Right. And what was discovered was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many people do, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal, I mean going from those symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome to that completely rebuilt place of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, emotionally at each stage, and we know what we need to do to move from one stage to the next. Healing is entirely predictable. And I'm happy to go through the stages with you if you want to hear them.
Okay, far away.
Okay.
Really interesting.
So they're all mapped out in Trust Again. It's what our coaches are all certified in. It's what we teach within the PBT Institute. Here's a distilled version. So stage 1 is like a setup stage. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everyone, me too, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and kind of neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. Imagine a table with only 2 legs. It's easy for that table to topple over. Well, that's us. Stage 2, shock, trauma, D-Day, discovery day, the scariest of all of the stages. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Right here, this is where you get the news. You've ignited the stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. This makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern us, that prevent chaos. Don't go there. This is how life works. And in one earth-shattering moment, every rule you've known to be real and true is no longer the bottom, has truly bottomed out on you. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So this is terrifying. Scariest stage.
Yeah, quite unsafe, because we need, or we believe that we have certainty in life. I mean, that's not true, but we believe we have. And when it really, the rug is pulled out from underneath us, then that really is scary.
Absolutely. And this is where our sense of safety and security is completely and totally shattered. But think about it. If the bottom were to drop out from under you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of whatever you could to stay safe and stay alive. That's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Right? Here's the trap, though. This is, to your point, stage 3, by far, hands down, is the most common place we get stuck. And here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where we just came from, we think it's good. We're like, okay, I got this. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we start planting roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And four things happen. The first thing is we start getting all those small self benefits. We get our story. We get to be right. We get someone to blame. We get sympathy from everyone we tell our story to, on and on and on, right? So we plant deeper roots. Again, we're not supposed to, but we don't know that. Now, because we're here longer than we should be, the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you deserved it. Maybe you're not that great. Maybe this, maybe that. Yeah. So we plant deeper roots. Again, we're not supposed to be here, but we don't know that. Now, because these are the thoughts we're thinking. Well, this is the energy we're putting out. Like energy attracts like energy. So now we're calling situations and circumstances and relationships towards to confirm, yep, this is exactly where we belong. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here because it feels...
That's quite relieving to know.
The transformation's coming. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go. Right here, we resign ourselves. We're like, this stinks, but I have to feed my kids. I have to get through my day. I have to go to work. So here's where we start numbing ourselves and we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from what's painful to feel or face. So think about it. We do that for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I could see someone 30 years out and say that numbing in front of the TV, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would say, it happened 30 years ago. All they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stay there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that's it. And so while Trust Again has the 5 stages, everyone is stuck in stage 3. So From Hardened to Healed, my most recent book, is just for stage 3. You owe it to yourself to move through the stages and not just land and stay in survival. Anyway, if you're willing, and willingness is a big word right here, if you're willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo this, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you've been creating in stages 2 and stage 3. What also happened, stage 4 feels like if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, your stuff's not all there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. That's what it feels like. But think about it. If you were to move, you don't bring everything with you. You don't bring the things that don't represent who you want to be in that new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, when you're undergoing a transformation, if they don't rise, they don't come. Here's where there's a change in friendships. And people say all the time, I've had these friends, 20 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. Very common to change friendships. So if people are wondering, why is it that I feel like a fish out of water with my friends right now? That could be why. Anyway, when we're in stage 4, we're making it cozy, making it mentally okay. We move into the 5th most beautiful stage, and this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. We didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now we do. We're making our mind is healing because we're making new rules, new boundaries based on the road we just traveled. And we have a new worldview based on what we see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
I think they're really great stages, but I can see how often people get stuck at different places. And I think too often, you're right, you get into that stage of, that people don't recognize that they've got into the same patterns. It's completely out of their awareness. Then they blame everybody else because there's only bad people out there, only bad men, only rubbish women who cheat, etc., etc. And so they just carry on with the same behaviors, or they feel so bad about themselves, they get stuck. I think it was stage 4 where they just get stuck. They're numbing.
Stage 3, right? Stage 3 is that's the one everybody gets stuck in. Yep.
Yeah, they get numbed and they then won't even try something new because it's too scary.
That's it. And that's why repeat betrayals happen all the time. Repeat betrayals happen because the idea is, after a betrayal, you have the ability to recreate an entirely new version of you. And people don't realize that. So, people ask me all the time, can trust be repaired? I say no. Can it be rebuilt? Yeah, but it takes a lot of work. And rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move on. And that's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely from the ground up new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband not long ago, is to transform people. We married each other again.
How wonderful. And you're right, because it's such a new relationship. You don't, that's
the thing. People are so afraid of that death and destruction of the old, but they can't rebirth the new without that. So they're clinging to what was, and they say, I just want everything like it was. It's not available anymore. Although there is a potential for something so much better.
Yes, and that's it. I hear quite often couples saying, I just want to go back to the way it was. And then I said, but you don't, because that's what you had and it wasn't working. So no, you've got to, as you say, take the things to your new home, that new place, take the good things and just get rid of the old ones that were not doing any good. All that stuff that you should have taken to the dump. And
it's exactly true. Yeah. And that's what happens. You with experience with betrayal, you take everything about you that you love, but you leave behind everything that no longer serves. If you didn't have boundaries in place, if you didn't stand up for your needs, if you didn't say what was important to you, all of that, whatever it was for you, you leave that behind. And you create an entirely new relationship based on a new version of you, based on new rules, based on new everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good. So what about if we are the betrayer?
Yeah. And, here's the thing. There are betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It can also wake them up to who they temporarily became. Now, for the betrayer who's just moving on to the next victim, I'm not talking about that person, but the person who realized, I just destroyed the heart and the trust of the person, the people that believed me, that counted on me, that had, that trusted me, all of that. For those people, we actually have a program for them now called our Rebuild program. It's brand new because there are many people like that. But what happens so often is they're so filled with shame and remorse and regret. And that's okay. Although that if you're not using that in your favor to create a new version of you, it's a waste. Shame is the most physically destructive emotion we have. And what heals shame? You bring light to it, you bring honor to it. So, if you're just walking around feeling this deep regret, remorse, that's not helping you or anyone. No. So what you need to do is heal whatever led to it. Maybe it was a sense of entitlement. Maybe it was a past trauma. Maybe it was, just you were numbing yourself from something unresolved, whatever it is. You need to heal that. And then you need to do whatever it takes to make it right. Now, if that person isn't alive or unwilling to hear you or deal with you or whatever, you pay it forward somehow. And you make sure with everybody, every path you cross, you're coming at it from a new level of integrity and honor and morality. And that's when it's trauma well served.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some really interesting things in what you said. And I think it'd be really great for anybody to explore these because I recognize that a lot of them in myself, but I also recognize them in clients and how they just get stuck and they feel that they keep repeating the same old patterns. And, was it Einstein who said that if you keep repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, that's his definition of insanity, isn't it? So, but people do that. And
it's so true. And even, and I just even found myself, this was so interesting because I've never betrayed another person, to my knowledge anyway. But I noticed I recently, I had all kinds of stress related symptoms and conditions. And I realized I was betraying my body. I wasn't treating my body well. I was abusing my body by working too hard and doing too much. And so I looked at it, I said, wow, you know what? What would I recommend to the betrayer? You seek forgiveness. You do everything you can to right the wrong. And I'm doing that with myself. So self-betrayal is a big one. And when we betray others, I mean, that's just the kind of thing that you just need to clean that up, because there's a version of you that's so much better than that. And it takes getting over your shame, remorse, regret. You need, if you're using that to fuel you and do something good with it, that's okay. But if you're just sitting with that, and drowning in self-pity and everything else, you're not helping the very people you hurt, and that's not right.
Great. We could talk for ages, I'm sure, about this. But what's one thing that people could take away with themselves that they could put into action now?
Yeah, I would say you've heard the stages. Find out what stage you're in. And if you are not in stage 4 or stage 5, there is a predictable roadmap now. Do not stay stuck. You owe it to yourself to just move through the stages. I didn't do anything that anybody else couldn't do. And now there's a roadmap for it. So stage 4, stage 5 feels so good. And it feels so much better than the lack and the scarcity and that this keeps happening and why me? And it's the kind of thing where identify where you are and move through it.
Fabulous. I'm going to put all your details in the show notes for people to get in touch with you. But what's one easy way, Debi?
The easiest way is everything is at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for today. And I've really enjoyed it. I hope the listeners have too.
Thank you.